I can't put it down, it's my new addiction. It's all in my head, but I want non-fiction. I don't like the world, but I like fantasy. Fairies, fucking girls, and they're pretty. Highly, do you like to read? I wrote this so you'd sleep with me. It's like 199 degrees when I go to the smart hut, SMUTHUT. All this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. SMUTHUT. Throbbing, swelling, pulsing, pain. Big fat tits stick in between. SMUTHUT. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. I wake up alone staring at my ceiling. I try not to care, so I just start reading. Sits in the cup chair, he watches me finish. He just likes to stare, and my god, he's British. Her job's to satisfy his needs. Those man bets I just wanna squeeze. Feels like I'm gonna sneeze. Squid isn't pee-pee, won't somebody breed me? SMUTHUT. All this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. SMUTHUT. Throbbing, swelling, pulsing, pain. Big fat tits stick in between. SMUTHUT. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. THUT. Draco fucked Hermione. Yes, he did. He fucked her real nice. Yes, he did. He fucked her twice. Yes, he did. He fucked her a lot. He fucked in the shed and he fucked in the smart babe. Sorry about that.
Okay, welcome. Okay, also reminder, I am going to be taking my headset off because I won't shout if I have my headset off because I can actually hear myself. Okay, welcome in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Smut Hut at camp. I'm not gonna lie, I'm going to miss this so much when we eventually do end camp. I'm gonna put my hair back up. Hold on, I just want to get it loose and then I'll put it back up. Hello everybody, welcome to this episode of Smut Hut at Camp Manacled. Before we begin, as a warning, reminder to everybody listening, this book is a fan fiction dark romance surrounding Draco and Hermione from Harry Potter. Trigger warnings are rape, mutilation, forced marriage, degradation, forced breeding, death, war, and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're not caught up, I would encourage you to mute and come back after you've caught up. All past episodes are on the Good Girls Club playlist. Thank you so much, Addie, on YouTube. So tonight's chapters are going to be chapter 50, flashback 25, chapter 50, 51, and 52. But before we start, because the last episode of the Good Girls Club was probably genuinely the most important 3 chapters of the entire series, I want to talk to you guys, and I will refresh your memory because I know it was like 2 weeks ago at this point, but first thing we find out that I want to talk to you guys about is the amulet that Hermione gives Draco. Hermione gives Draco, we know that Draco was terribly like dark magic filled from the runes that Voldemort inflicted on him, right? But we didn't know that Hermione gave up the amulet, the Heart of Isis, that's what it was called, that she received. Oh my God. ICP! Thank you so much, ICP, for the raid! Thank you. I'm so glad you actually raided before we started reading. Thank you so much, ICP. I appreciate you so much. Welcome into the poop coven. How was your stream, ICP? What were you doing? Thank you so much. For anyone who's new, thank you. We are a part of the Posse, which is ICP's stream team. We are at Coven camp for the month of August. We are doing Smutty Saturday, which is something we do every Saturday, whether we're at camp or we're not at camp. We are reading a dark romance fan fiction based off of Hermione and Draco from Harry Potter. If you are into Harry Potter, you will love Manacled. It is really what, in a lot of ways, what really would happen if Harry Potter was written for adults. That is genuinely the truth. Like, that is 100%, this is the real narrative. This becomes the new meta once you get into it. It is really incredible. It's one of the best books you'll ever read, and all of our past episodes are on the Good Girls Club playlist on YouTube. But viewer discretion is advised. It is a dark romance. It's pretty fucked up. The trigger warnings are extensive. They are, trigger warnings: rape, mutilation, forced marriage, degradation, forced breeding, death, war, and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to the Poop Coven. We are cleaning up. We are open until 2 a.m. Damn, ICP. Thank you so much for the raid. I am so incredibly grateful. Welcome in, everybody, if you are new. I'm really grateful for the raid. I appreciate you so much. We were just about to go through a recap of last episode of the Good Girls Club. How you doing, Navy? How are you? So welcome in. We are going to do a little recap of our last episode of the Good Girls Club. Also, if this is not your cup of tea, you can leave a lurk, mute, and then come back in about an hour or so, and then we are actually having a slumber party on stream where I'm going to be sleeping on stream. I'm not fucking kidding. I'm gonna sleep on stream in a little tent like contraption, and yeah, it's gonna be a whole thing. So again, welcome in. We're in for a nice, long, thick stream tonight, so thank you again so much for everyone being here. I appreciate you so much. So, spoilers, what's going on? So, going back to the discussion about last episode of, also no alerts and no stickers are on this scene, just in case anybody does anything. So thank you again, ICP, so much for the raid. I'm so incredibly grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you need a raid and run, I love your guts. Thank you so much. Okay. So we find out in the last episode of the Good Girls Club, we find out that Hermione had this amulet that she received in Egypt during her training as a healer, the most prestigious and important healer that the Order of Phoenix has. We find out that she received this amulet called the Heart of Isis, which is literally like was intended and given to her to save Harry's life. Harry fuck me Potter, okay? That is what the Heart of Isis was intended for. She uses it to save Draco Malfoy, not realizing that she was being duped the whole time, that Moody and Kingsley were actually kind of hoping that the runes would kill Draco. Like, that was really like their end. That's why they didn't intervene. That's why they didn't give her a heads up that he had gotten like basically horrifically mutilated. Like, they literally just thought, oh, well, he's gonna die and that's what it is, and he served his purpose and whatever. No, that was not the intention. And so she used this precious stone to save Draco's life. The stone, coupled with the runes that Voldemort inflicted, made him, he was already basically the most lethal dark wizard other than Voldemort himself. But coupling the runes, that basically the rune said you can do what, like, he got to choose them, right? And he chose the runes to basically signify you can do whatever you want and be as diligent and one-track mind, as possible. And then the runes made it so that dark magic was essentially no longer hurting him like it would before. So she made him even more powerful without even really comprehending what she did. And then that's one part of it, okay? Then we also find out, which I would love to know if you guys have any thoughts about her using that stone on Draco instead of for Harry, if you think that means anything, if what you think about them manipulating her, Kingsley and Moody using her just as egregiously as she's really using Draco. But then what I really want to talk to you guys about is your thoughts when we finally find out Draco's fucking motives. Why did he turncoat? Why did he become a spy like Snape for the good guys? Why? We finally find out that it is because during the last year of all the main guys' year, I think it was their 5th year of Hogwarts, Draco kills Dumbledore. He shoots him with an Avada in the back in a hallway and kills him in this story. And no one knew why. Like, no one, like, they thought he was just doing it to us. Hello? Aiden's calling me? I think he wants to set up, okay, he can't do it right now. You can't set up the speakers right now. I'm in the middle of doing this Money Saturday. It's okay, I love you. We'll be done a little bit later. I love you so much, bye. Okay, so anyways, sorry guys. Oh my God, sorry. So then we find out that not so much the mention, oh yes, not to mention the monetary value of that necklace that could have helped the order for, like, could have funded the order and all of her potions and all of her stuff. He said indefinitely. Like, Snape literally said, like, indefinitely, which is insane, right? That's insane. So we have that, which is incredible and ridiculous and insane. But then on top of that, we now find out that also his motives were that during that last year of Hogwarts, we thought, oh, he killed Dumbledore to ascend and become a Death Eater, but no, he actually didn't. So what happened is, and this is a humongous thing that we find out finally at long last, is that Voldemort was holding his mother captive in a cage, torturing her, and would only release her for like months, would only release her if he killed Dumbledore. That's why he did that. And then forced him to take the dark mark. And then once he did that, he removed his mother, Narcissa, from the cage, but then lived in their fucking house with them, further inflicting emotional terror on all of the Malfoys, really. Until he basically felt like he fucked them all so deeply that he could leave and, like, leave them alone. So we finally, and then she was never the same. She was basically ruined. You don't know the whole story yet about her. You know, we know how she dies. We know that the Weasleys inadvertently caused a sparring that happens at Lestrange Manor that burns the manor down. And we know that Lucius blames the Weasleys, and that's why Lucius does that terrible, terrible curse to the, I'm blanking on Ron's dad's name. Why am I blanking on this? On the father of the Weasleys. And we understand, but you don't even know the whole, even Draco doesn't know the full extent of what they did to Narcissa while she was in that cage. There's an alluding to rape. There's an alluding to, I mean, he cruciatused her until she was permanently nerve damaged, like literally. And then once Narcissa was out, right? Lucius and Draco are, as Hermione calls them and Snape calls them, they're essentially like dragons. So once they decide something is theirs to protect, right? They become incredibly protective to the point where, like, in Draco's particular situation, Narcissa almost died giving birth to Draco. Lucius said, you have to protect your mother. You have to protect your mother, giving him so much pressure. And then he becomes like completely consumed with doing everything he can to keep his mom safe, and then she dies anyways. And then we find out, okay, well, then Hermione's like, well, okay, but your mom fucking died a year ago, so, like, why the hell are you just turncoating now? And he's like, because if I had done it immediately, I would have been found out immediately. Like, he would have put 2 and 2 together. Obviously, you just killed my mom, you tortured her, obviously I'm gonna fucking turncoat. So he instead dug down and stayed. Good night, Horace Bully. He dug down and instead he stayed and climbed the ranks, becoming integral to Voldemort's reign, right? But then this is what was, I think, also a really important thing, is that why would he do that too? And then he's like, I'm not gonna live. Like, I'm not gonna make it out of this. So I thought, if I'm gonna die either way, I want to cause as much catastrophe when I die. Like, I want to cripple and ruin the Death Eater's reign, because there will be a huge vacuum, there will be a power struggle, it will collapse on itself if I make myself integral. So he really thought about this. He doesn't expect to live. He doesn't expect, I love you, Billy Goat, so much. He doesn't expect to live. He doesn't expect to make it out. And now I think another thing that was unveiled that I think was so important is that Hermione wins, right? She finally seduces him. They have sex. He finally gives in. And he admits it. He's like, you won. Like, you got what you wanted. But this is the problem, right? It wasn't the sex. Because, yes, you know, sex can be meaningless. It's that, like, because he could have sex and it could be kind of meaningless. She could have sex and it could be meaningless. But it was him acknowledging she won. And I think this is what I want to talk to you guys about. It wasn't that, yes, she successfully manipulated him and he's aware. But it was also that the undertone of that is that she successfully made him fall for her. And now she matters to him in a way that he wants to protect her, like Narcissa. So he does the unbreakable vow with Hermione. And he swears fealty to them, to the Order of the Phoenix. And he's going to do everything he can to keep essentially Hermione and the Order of Phoenix alive. And the one thing that's so heart-wrenching about this is Draco never wanted to care about somebody as much as he cared about Narcissa, because he lost her and he never really recovered. And now he loves Hermione, whether he said it or not. That's what that whole exchange was like. You won. Are you happy now? And why he's doing the unbreakable vow, because now he loves her, like he's in it with her, like he's fallen for her, and she knows. And so there was a ton. I think those 3 chapters, again, are so integral to the storyline. We find out the heart of Isis. We find out about what Draco's motives are, and they have sex, and they do the unbreakable vow. So now that you know, my biggest question for you guys, because I know volume 1 is so painful. You're like, oh my God, Draco's this monster, and he's a murderer, and he's a kind of a rapist. Like, I want to know, after hearing his motive, after hearing a lot of what's been going on in their backstory and how manipulated Draco was into caring for Hermione and falling for her, I want to know, what are your thoughts on this morally gray conundrum? We never got to talk about it. I want to know, what are your thoughts on Draco, on Hermione, on the Order of Phoenix? Or I want to know anything you want to share. Sexy sex, the dirty purchase. I mean, Billy Goat, the sex was not beautiful. Let's put it that way. It wasn't beautiful. She lost her virginity. She didn't explain to him that it was her first time, so he was a little rough. And he was very upset with her and himself that he didn't know it was her first time. Like, how would he know? He assumed. And they had sex on the fucking floor. It wasn't great. It wasn't great. Raymonds, I love you so much. I'm obsessed. Draco has the same hatred to the Dark Lord. That's Dueling Needles. Amazing correlation. Draco has the same hatred to the Dark Lord that Snape has for killing Lily. And I think that's also really something I wanted to note too, is that even though the Weasleys had this exchange at Lestrange Manor, that inevitably the Fiend Fire, which wasn't, I don't think it was caused by the Weasleys, but it was like the exchange of the skirmish. They burned Lestrange down and killed Bellatrix, no big whoop there, but killed his mom. He does not blame the Weasleys. He doesn't. He doesn't like them. I don't think he likes Harry either, but his hatred, all of this is because of he wants to take down the Dark Lord. And I think that's really a good note, that Snape turned because of Lily dying. And yes, this is his version. It could be better, but can imagine other guys. Right. The book has changed my complete outlook. And I think what's so important is that, you know, when you read volume 1 first, right, I think it's intended. You read volume 1 first, you're hearing the story after this story. So volume 2 happens before volume 1 in the timeline, the chronological timeline of the world. We know, because of volume 1, we know something happens that the good guys lose. We know Hermione becomes imprisoned. We know she becomes into the breeding program. We know that they fail. We don't know why or how they fail, but we know they fucking fail. So you're reading all this and you're sitting there and you have hope. You're like, you're sitting there, but we already know. But we're like playing. It's almost like Memento. Like, you're reversing it, which I think is such a cool thing. We don't know the story, but we also now know, right, that Hermione means something to Draco. So all of his motivations in volume 1 also makes a lot of sense. insane protectiveness over her, his anger when anyone messes with her, and also his absolute vehement disgust and like anguish at having to do the things he was doing to her. And you'll find out more about that too. Guess who's up? Hi, Papa Wolfie's book has changed my outlook on it so much. I'm changing my pieces. Do it, Sakaro. You doing this makes me want to fall for the TikTok sale of this book, but I'm afraid of it. Oh, Billy Goat. I don't know. I exchanged my book, my bound book, with a girl who binds books on Reddit. I sent her my like a special edition of A Court of Throne of Roses, and she bound this book for me. I don't know about the TikTok stuff, but it really is amazing. The book is worth having in physically. I really hate how Lily is the only motivation for Snape looking. Well, honestly, you could go into how Snape is also like kind of an asshole. Like Snape is sort of like a dick. And even if you watch the movies, like Snape's love for Lily and even like his weird animosity to Harry was also like really fucked up. Like in the movies, in the books, like Snape really isn't a good guy. And in some ways, Snape is not any better or worse than Draco. But the difference is that Snape, I guess, turncoated earlier. So he appears to be a better guy, but he's kind of also an asshole. Why would Draco do the most unthinkable if he's trying to protect Hermione? Still can't forgive him for that. He's powerful and smart. There's other ways to get things done. I know it's there for the shock value, and that's how these kind of books are written, so I understand. Well, Andy, the truth is, if you think about it though, he can't. Like, I don't, honestly, I don't even remember, you know, the specific, I don't want to spoil anything, but because I actually don't remember. But the truth is that okay, let me not spoil anything because I think I was about to. But there's more. I've always heard Snape from the books to the movies for some reason. Was so happy at the ending. Billy Goat, I feel like Snape, my biggest gripe with Snape is always that Harry's dad seemed like kind of a bully and an asshole for sure. But Snape took out all of his anger on Harry. And Harry is just the byproduct of things out of his control. And I think he was doing it, yes, to keep himself like, you know, protected emotionally. And every time he looked at Harry, he saw Lily. But it's still like, Harry was faultless and treated him like shit, you know? So it's like, he was a child. It wasn't his fault. And I don't like that aspect about Snape. I mean, the books, it was messed up. I hate how they use it as a way to justify him. Exactly, Sakaro, thank you. I know he did it as a way to like protect himself from loving Harry or caring about Harry because like there was so much going on, but I still feel like listen, Dumbledore's an asshole too. Dumbledore was using Harry, kept him at, you know, in the gray, in the dark, didn't tell him things, didn't disclose things, made it harder than necessary for Harry and his friends to get through all the trials and tribulations, and then just to lead Harry to be a slaughter at the end and just to die at the right time. He's an asshole too. But Dumbledore's not really in this book, obviously, so if we're talking about Snape, yeah. It's like Snape is jealous of Harry's reputation. Yes, I don't know. I think what's beautiful, even from the original books, I think what's really special about any of these books and the OG books or the movies, is that these characters are gray. And like, whether you're there for the children, which is like, Snape is morally gray. Harry's dad is morally gray. Dumbledore's morally gray. I like that because people are complicated. Obviously, Voldemort is morally black. There's no question. You know, he's morally black. But these other characters, you know, like, when you pigeonhole, like, I think that's why I love this story so much, because Hermione feels like, how could she be a morally gray person? Because so much happens to her in the first book. You're like, no, she could. But if you read into the volume 2, she is doing some fucked up shit to Draco too. And everyone's using each other, Kingsley and Moody, and everyone's using each other. There's so much anguish and pain and complicated, complex characters. Like, I think that's really special. And like, even though Harry is all about staying on the side of the light, I think it's really important to note that even Harry really isn't. You know, Harry was a clone of his dad who bullied Snape because Dumbledore had to remind Snape's Harry. Yes. I was the Hogwarts letters age. Me too, Sakaro, me too. All right. Let's get into this because, so we left off chapter 49, and the last thing that happened was Hermione and Draco did an unbreakable vow, keeping essentially him tethered to her for life. And then the last thing that stupid fucking Moody says is, good work, Granger, and then he walks out. So basically, Hermione feels like she sold her body, sold her soul, sold her life to the Order and manipulated Draco, and Draco has now fallen for her against his will in a weird way, which is very complicated and nuanced. And now let's get into it. Chapter 50, flashback 25. Here we go, guys. Chapter 50, flashback 25, February 2003. Grimmauld Place was quiet and somber. One of the major safe houses had been compromised. It had housed several significant figures in the Resistance, members of DA and the Order. They still weren't sure what happened. A Patronus from Alicia Spinnet had burst into Grimmauld Place in the middle of the night. By the time the Order could mobilize a response, whatever had happened had mostly ended. It hadn't even been a Death Eater attack. Hags, mostly, and werewolves. The house had been overrun with them. According to Ginny, it had been quite literally crawling with hags. More than 100. Many of the survivors brought back to the hospital were missing too many internal organs to be healed. Alicia Spinnet, Daedalus Diggle, Semptia Spectre, and about 30 other people had died. It abruptly shattered the high spirits that had been buoying the Resistance. In the process of trying to recover the survivors, Kingsley and several other members of the Order and Resistance used dark magic in order to force their way into the house. It had resulted in an explosive argument between Harry and Kingsley afterwards, and the house was on edge. The next week, when Hermione returned to the shack alone, she walked in uncertain of what would happen next. The room was empty. She stood, waiting nervously. Draco apparated in a minute later. They stood staring at each other for several minutes. He ran his eyes over her, cataloging her appearance in a way that had been habitual at that point. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what was going to happen. I brought practice knives today, Draco said, as though the past 2 weeks hadn't happened. Oh. He pulled them out of his robes. One of the knives was small, the same size as the set he'd given her for Christmas. The second was larger. He pressed the blade into his hand demonstratively. They have wards on the tip of the blade. They can't break the skin, although they can bruise. He tossed the smaller knife to her. Knives are growing increasingly common in the field. Hags regularly carry them. Death Eaters are beginning to pick up on the trend. They're decent backup if you lose your wand. Hermione examined the wand. Hermione examined the knife, running her finger along the edge that appeared razor sharp but felt more like a handle of a piece of cutlery. It's difficult to win in a knife fight, even if you survive it. I am aware, Hermione said stiffly. She treated knife injuries with increasingly regularity during the last year. As far as non-magical injuries went, knives were the worst. Mangled internal organs, severe blood loss, punctured lungs, hemorrhage. Like severe slicing hexes, but always more ragged and difficult to close. I imagine you had. He had not met her eyes, not once. Since the moment he made the vow, his eyes had dropped away from hers. We'll start with deflecting attacks. Then I show you how to attack with yours. Use non-lethal hexes to try to stop me. Your goal is to drop me before I make contact, or to deflect it if I get within range. He walked toward her. In order to avoid a knife attack, you should use your opponent's weight and momentum against them. If they're lunging, dodge and try to disarm them. He demonstrated several techniques in slow motion, showing Hermione how to grab his wrist, guide it safely past her body, and then try to twist the knife free. Where did you learn all this? She asked after he demonstrated a 10th method of disarming someone, which involved breaking their arm. His hands froze. Bellatrix. I trained under her for 4 years. She had a fondness for knives. Did she know about your mother? He stepped away from her and his expression was tense. She did. She was always loyal to the Dark Lord, but she cared for her sister enough to want to see me succeed rather than fail as we expected. Did your father know? She couldn't stop herself from asking the question. Draco swallowed. No. He looked away. My father, He was very protective of my mother. If he'd known... Draco was silent for a moment. Occlumency isn't a talent that he has. Not to the level he would have needed it. He would have been vengeful, and it would have damned us all. The muscle in his jaw rippled. My mother insisted we hide her condition from him. There was a potion prescribed by a Danish mind healer. It masked most of her symptoms, prevented her from panicking when she was required to make an appearance. She took it when my father visited. The Dark Lord had mostly kept my father in France and Belgium following his release. He assumed she was cold and distant because he blamed him for taking the mark. He assumed she was cold and distant because she blamed him for taking the mark. For my taking the mark. And after Lestrange Manor, well, I suppose I could have just told him then. The corner of his mouth twisted, but I thought I could do more to avenge her if I had more time. I didn't realize how he'd take the news. He gave a bitter smile as he stared down at his hands. I'm sure the Order wishes I had. Hermione blinked as she tried to imagine what state the Order might be with Arthur and Molly and George still fighting, but with no Draco, no rescues, no intelligence on which battles they could win, no warnings before they were hit. She twisted the knife in her hands. The Weasleys are my family, but we probably would have lost by now. You weren't crucial in the army then. Your death and your father's wouldn't have had been enough to affect the outcome of the war. They'd probably all be dead. He snorted faintly and continued to avoid her eyes. Draco? She said tentatively, starting to reach toward him. He jerked sharply away from her. We should continue with training, he said in a cold voice, given that you've now seen firsthand the devastation caused by hags. Hermione swallowed. We still didn't know how they got in. We don't have any idea. Do you know anything about it? Hags aren't in my jurisdiction. I didn't hear until afterward, or I would have tried to give some warning. He hesitated. It's possible someone in Sussex is working to find a way around the Fidelis charm using dark creature magic. If they suspected a safe house location, it may have been an unfortunately successful experiment. There are hundreds of programs in Sussex. The branches don't collaborate often. I don't have any contacts in all of them. We should reward your safe houses and move any that you can. We are. Good, he said as he flipped this knife in his hand. Let's continue with training. He made her practice in forms and techniques again and again and again. All right, let's see how you manage with a real attack, he said after an hour of slow practice. He stepped away from her. He spun the knife in his right hand the same way he spun his wand as he crossed the room and got into position. His expression was cold and intent as he stared toward her. Then, without warning, he lunged. Hermione dodged away and shot mild hexes as she evaded his initial attack. He was quick and relentless. He spun her around and brought the knife up to her throat before she could register that she needed to stop hexing him and try to deflect. They both froze. Their eyes met for a moment, and it was like time stopped. His face was only inches away from hers, and Hermione forgot to breathe. His expression grew hard, and he stepped abruptly away from her. Again, timing is everything. You're still too reluctant to move. His tone was almost vicious. He stalked across the room and attacked her once more. After an hour, he stopped. All right, that's enough for today, he said, walking away from her. He reached into his robes and pulled out a scroll. Hermione bit her lip, went over to her satchel, and withdrew an envelope. She gripped it nervously in her hands as she turned to face him. Moody said to give you this, she said, glancing down at the floor. It appeared to have been carefully scrubbed. She looked up in time to see his expression flicker. Of course, my orders for the week. His mouth twisted briefly as he jerked it from her fingers. She accepted the scroll in his hands and then stood hesitating. Draco, Run along home, Granger. I have work to do. His tone was cold. He turned away from her and ripped open the envelope. Hermione stood for another minute, studying his back. He didn't look back at her, and he disappeared without a sound. The next week, he still wouldn't meet her eyes. He barely spoke to her. He trained her for exactly 2 hours a week, hand over his intelligence reports, take his orders from Moody, and leave. But he was alive. She got to see him and know he was still alive. However, being alive did not appear to be something he cared about. He just looked tired. The rage around him felt smothered. He appeared to be existing out of sheer obligation. After 3 weeks, she caught him by the wrist as he was accepting the envelope in her hand. "Draco, please look at me," she said, her voice pleading. He jerked his hand away and looked up at her. His face and eyes were cold. "Is all this not enough for you, Granger? Is there something else you want?" "No, I'm sorry," he sneered. "Perhaps someday, when I have time, I can make a list for you all the things that apologies don't fix." Hermione's hand dropped. "Draco, He was gone. She returned to Grimmauld Place. Her chest felt hollow. Everything felt void. She wanted to get rid of her books, her journals, everything related to Draco. It felt vindictive and cruel to have a notebook with neat bullet points. Sensitive hands, cruciatus treatment, useful context for physical contact. Shoulders and neck, scars, very responsive. Lower jaw near ears, cheekbones, as well as notes for herself. Definite interest in her hair. Loosen braids after foraging, pull a few curls free. Wrists easy contact. Find context for bringing up sleeves. Likes neck, throat. Possessive trait. Wear collared shirts partly unbuttoned or V-necks. Borrow Ginny's blue boat neck shirt. All the psychology books, the books on emotional trauma, on attachment disorders, on body language and involuntary physical cues. She wanted to burn it all. She went up to her shared room with Ginny. Harry was currently on a mission in Scotland. The Order was trying to find a way to break into Hogwarts. It was the only place they were almost certain there was a Horcrux to be found. But the castle was impenetrable. The Death Eaters were thorough when the prison was set up. Hogsmeade had been nearly razed in the early years of the war. There was no Shrieking Shack tunnel or tunnel via the hump of Gilhilda de Gorsmore. That wasn't in the movies. The Order kept trying to find a way past the wards without success. It was Harry's third mission there. Harry, Ron, Terry Boot, and Zachariah Smith had been sent. Harry hadn't spoken to Hermione since Christmas. She cast the unlocking charms on her bedroom door and pushed it open. As she walked in, she heard a quick gasp. Ginny was huddled next to her bed, quietly sobbing. She turned sharply when Hermione entered the room. Ginny's expression as she turned and caught sight of Hermione was anguished. Her chest was stuttering sharply as she gasped rapidly through her open mouth. Even her red hair was wet with tears. "Ginny?" Hermione said. "Ginny, what's wrong? What happened?" "I don't..." Ginny forced the words out and then started crying harder. Hermione knelt down next to her friend and hugged her. "Oh God, Hermione!" Ginny gasped. "I don't know how." Ginny broke off as she struggled to breathe. Choked hiccoughing sounds emerged from deep in her throat as she fought against her spasming lungs. "It's all right. Breathe. You need to breathe. Tell me what's wrong. I'll help you," Hermione promised as she ran her hands up and down Ginny's shoulders. "Just breathe. In a count of 4. Hold it, then out through your nose for a count of 6. We'll build up to that. I'll breathe with you, all right? Come on, breathe with me. I've got you." But Ginny just cried harder. "It's all right," Hermione kept saying as she started taking deep, demonstrative breaths for Ginny to follow. She held Ginny tightly in her arms so that she'd feel Hermione's chest expanding and contracting slowly as a subconscious cue. Ginny kept crying for several more minutes before her sobs slowed and her breathing slowly began mirroring Hermione's. Do you want to tell me what's wrong, or would you rather I got someone else? Hermione asked when she was sure Ginny was not going to keep hyperventilating. No, you can't! Ginny gripped Hermione's shirt roughly to stop her. Oh God, don't! Ginny started sobbing into Hermione's shoulder again. I didn't mean to, Ginny sobbed. I didn't mean to, I don't know what to do. Ginny, what is wrong? Hermione was growing cold with dread. What had possibly happened to make Ginny cry so much? Ginny was silent for several seconds. Then she drew a deep breath and held it for a moment. I'm pregnant. Ginny burst into tears again. Hermione jerked back and stared at Ginny in horror. She felt as though she'd been violently punched in the chest. How? Did the contraceptive potion not work? Hermione felt on the verge of panic attack of her own. Oh God. If the contraceptive potion had failed, if Hermione were pregnant, she'd have to abort it. She couldn't be pregnant during a war. It was not worth the risk. Pregnancy would cause her magic to destabilize. She regularly used certain spells countering curses that were in the darker shades of gray. It was cumulative, and the exposure could result in fetal abnormalities. It might have already, if she were pregnant. Now that Padma had mostly replaced her, developing counter curses was one of the most vital things Hermione did in the hospital wing. Oh my God, if Draco found out that she'd seduced him when she was fertile, he'd probably think she did it on purpose. Oh God, he'd hate her forever. Even more than he already did. The tips of Hermione's fingers were beginning to tingle as though there were needles pricking them. Ginny's expression furrowed. She stared at Hermione's frozen expression as she smeared her tears away with the back of her hands. No, I didn't. I was only taking it when Harry was here because of the taste, you know, but last month when I was in Ireland and he and Ron showed up at the safe house, I didn't have the potion with me. I thought it was just once. The charm, should be enough. Hermione sniffled and buried her face in her hands. Hermione nearly collapsed with relief. There wasn't anything wrong with her contraceptive potion. Hermione shoved the line of thought away and slammed her occlumency walls in place, forcing herself to focus on Ginny. She hugged Ginny reassuringly and pressed a kiss in her hair. It's all right. It will only take me a few days to get the ingredients to make an abortifacient. Abortifacient? I can't. Ginny choked on the words and started crying again. Hermione's hands on Ginny's shoulders tightened as she stared at her. She drew a quick breath. You want to keep it? Ginny nodded, sniffling. I have to. Harry, all he talks about is having a family. How after the war, we're going to have children. Boys named James and Sirius or Colin, or girls named Lily and Luna. That's everything he dreams of. If I got an abortion, it would break his heart. He'd say it was fine, but he'd be devastated. To him, it would mean I didn't think he could win. And I can't keep something like that a secret my whole life, knowing he'd be brokenhearted if he knew, and just pretending. Hermione gave a slow nod and looked away. All right, she swallowed. You could probably stay here until Harry gets back from his current mission, and then we can move you to one of the hospice safe houses. You'll want to be with your mom, won't you? Ginny shook her head sharply, smearing the tears on her face. No, I need to hide it. No one can know. Not Mom, not Harry, not anyone. Hermione stared at Ginny in bewilderment. Ginny looked down and her chest shuddered. Harry isn't doing very well right now. Everyone had been getting so excited that we're nearing the end, that we're at the final hall, and he's happy. He thinks it could be real, but it's also breaking him. It's all resting on him, but He doesn't know how to win, how it's supposed to work. He's afraid if anyone realizes it, that the whole resistance would collapse. He started having nightmares again, even with me. I don't think he even knows how to function without Ron. We're all that's holding him up. If he finds out I'm pregnant, I'm afraid the stress will end up breaking him completely. It's not like he needs more motivation than he already has. Thinking that he has a child depending on him, it would probably make everything worse. Hermione swallowed hard, trying to weigh whether there would be any value in trying to dissuade Ginny. She studied Ginny's face, the stubborn set lines of her mouth and jaw, and the determined fire in her eyes. Hermione let out a low, tired sigh. What do you want to do? I don't know. Maybe I could pretend to get sick with something and hide at one of the hospice houses? Hermione raised her eyebrows doubtfully, but after a moment she tilted her head thoughtfully to the side. I think I could pull that off. But, Ginny, you're going to have to be isolated. It could be months. What if you had the baby and the war is still going? Are you going to hide it from Harry then too? Ginny shook her head. No. If the war goes that long, I'll come clean. But if I'm pregnant, Harry will just worry. But being pregnant isn't the same as having an actual baby. If you made me seem sick with something like contagious but curable, he'll be upset, but he'll be fine. He trusts you. If you tell him it'll take a few months to heal, but I'll be all right, he'll believe you. He knows you don't lie to him, even when he wants you to. Hermione's eyes dropped and she twisted the hem of her shirt in her fingers. Jenny grabbed her hand. You'll help, Hermione. You'll help me protect Harry, won't you? Hermione nodded slowly. Her whole body felt leaden. I'll help you. I'm going to need a few days to figure out how to do this. Thanks, Hermione. Ginny grew tearful again. God, I was so careful. I never meant for this to happen. Hermione hugged her stiffly and let Ginny cry into her shoulder for several more minutes. She rubbed absent-minded circles on Ginny's back while she made a mental checklist. We'll figure something out. I know you weren't trying to get pregnant. Ginny nodded against Hermione's neck. Thanks. I mean it, Hermione. You're the only person I can trust with this. She sat back and rubbed her face. God, these hormones and everything smells. I don't even know how I've cried this much. Oh, I think I'm going to have to just hide in here. I passed the kitchen earlier and I nearly threw up in the hallway. Hermione nodded as she mentally cataloged long-term illnesses. That's fine. I need to research. She just stood up. Just stay here. Let me know if you need anything, okay? Hermione walked out of the room and down the hallway to the bathroom. She closed the door carefully behind herself and, looking down at her stomach, cast a pregnancy detection charm. Her hands were shaking faintly. Negative. She closed her eyes and collapsed against the door in relief. She stayed there for another minute until her hands stopped shaking. Then she hurried out of the bathroom to the library. Hermione spent nearly 2 days straight brewing experimental potions and practicing glamour charms trying to make sure that every detail was perfect. She gathered up a bag full of potions and went into the bathroom. She downed a small vial and watched the potion take effect. It took a few minutes. Then a sensation similar to a mild form of polyjuice tingled across her skin, and she watched herself transform. Her skin broke out in tight clusters of painful-looking purple pustules across her entire body. She grimaced and inspected herself from all angles. It was horribly convincing transformation. She pressed and prodded at several of the pustules, but felt nothing. The suspended glamour was painless. She swallowed the antidote and felt her skin tingle as she watched her skin clear. She gathered up her potions and went to her room. Ginny was sitting in her bed, flipping through a magazine. Hermione sat down, and Ginny looked up, her eyes wide and curious. Hermione fidgeted with the bag in her hands. I've developed a potion that mimics the external symptoms of Spattergroit's disease. Ginny's face screwed up. Really? Does it have to be that? Hermione rolled her eyes. It's the best option I could come up with that meets all your requirements. It's contagious. It's known to take up to a year to recover from, so you could stay hidden as long as necessary. It looks convincing if you don't look horribly sick. People might be skeptical, especially since your brothers are the ones who invented giving snack boxes. No one is going to think you're faking this, and possibly, most importantly, it's non-lethal. Harry isn't going to have to worry that you may die from it. Since it's not a full physical transformation, just an external glamour, I was able to suspend the potion in dragon blood, which means each dose will last a few weeks. You won't have to constantly redose to maintain it. Ginny nodded. Hermione fidgeted with the string on the bag. Spattergroit is highly contagious. If someone in the resistance contracted it, they would be immediately placed in quarantine to prevent risking the entire resistance, even though it's non-lethal. I'm going to have to inform Kingsley of the real situation in order to quarantine you. Ginny immediately opened her mouth to object, but Hermione held up her hand to silence her. If I don't tell him, he won't approve having me as your caretaker. I promise. If I explain it, he won't feel obliged to tell Harry. But he does need to know in order to maintain the lie. And that way, if anyone in your family or Harry try to demand to see you, he has more veto power than I do. Moody will back him too. We need Kingsley. Ginny gave a reluctant nod. Hermione pulled out a book with a marked chapter which held out to Ginny. Early symptoms of Spattergroit are itching and sore throat. Anyone you interact with is going to get quarantined for a few days, so avoid Poppy and Padma. Hermione's mouth twitched faintly. If you have anyone you think needs a few days off, they're the ones you should go see. The corner of Ginny's mouth lifted slightly. Her eyes grew misty. Hermione stood up. I need to go talk to Kingsley. I'm going to dose you before you go to bed, so you'll wake up with it. Ginny's disease threw Grimmauld into chaos. Hermione and Ginny's room was placed under a mountain of quarantine and containment wards. Only Hermione could enter the room without setting off a house full of screaming alarms. Kingsley and Hermione coordinated details as much as possible. Once the diagnosis was given, Hermione and a handful of other occupants in Grimmauld Place were also placed under a precautionary 3-day quarantine in another room. Padma was sent foraging and took Pavarti with her. The girls fell into a harpy trap. They fought their way out, but Pavarti ended up with lacerations down her back, and Padma's right foot was almost entirely chewed off. Jesus Christ. Hermione consulted with Poppy through the quarantine wards, but there was nothing that could be done to restore Padma's foot. Once everyone under temporary quarantine had been cleared, Kingsley placed Hermione in charge of monitoring Ginny's condition. She would visit Ginny every 4 days. The rest of the time, Ginny would have to be kept in isolation. No one would enter her room. Dobby was made responsible for caring for Ginny day to day and getting meals to her. When Molly Weasley recovered from her indignation at Kingsley for not being permitted to see her own daughter, she was effusive in her appreciation to Hermione for how meticulously Hermione had mapped out Ginny's care. Researching midwifery on the sly was folded into the endless list Hermione secretly did when she wasn't in the hospital ward covering for Padma. The resistance was too busy for word of Ginny's sickness to cause ripples for long. Once the initial panic that the disease might spread had abated, things slipped back into a tenuous sense of normalcy. Hermione only had to dread Ron and Harry's reactions when they returned from Scotland. Her whole life felt tense without any sense of relief. She felt worn through, stretched out until she was nearly transparent. She worried every day about Draco, but seeing him was just a different kind of agony. He was gaunt and on edge. He'd barely look at her. He'd barely speak to her. He trained her. He turned over his information. He accepted his orders from Moody, and then he left. When she tried to speak to him, he just grew colder. After several more weeks, he paused and looked over her again rather than just leaving. Tell Moody to feed you. You look like a corpse. He vanished before Hermione could say anything. When she returned to Grimmauld Place, Angelina looked up from a match of wizard's chess with Katie, her expression sober. Harry and Ron and Terry are back. The Order is debriefing now. No one has told them about Ginny yet. Hermione nodded and went to the dining room. The castle has so many wards it's hard to even find, Harry was saying in a low, reluctant voice when Hermione opened the door. He was slumped low in his chair. His eyes had such a dark shadows under them that they looked bruised. We went through the ruins of Hogmeads trying to find any of the old tunnels. We tried digging out of the Honeyduke's tunnel, but it's collapsed. So we had the idea of trying to approach the Black Lake, but when we went in and Fairy started coming up, and that's when Zacharias... It wasn't Harry's fault. The lake was my idea. Ron broke in as soon as Harry's voice trailed away. When he tried to go in after Zacharias, I stopped him. Ron had faintly dazed expression, as though he were in shock. Harry refused to look at Ron. That was the right decision, Ron. In Fairy and water are nearly impossible to fight since they can't be set on fire, Remus said, resting a hand on Ron's shoulder. That's not enough of a reason to let Zacharias drown, Harry said in a bitter voice, his expression twisted with frustration. He was holding a battered quill and steadily rippling the barbs off each side as he twisted it around and around in his fingers. There was something we could have done if Ron hadn't wasted time restraining me and left Terry to go in alone. Keeping you alive is Ron's job, Harry, Kingsley said. Those are his orders. If you're belligerent about it, I'll reassign him and take over your protection personally. Do you object your partner, Harry? Harry glanced at Kingsley, crushing the quill in his hands. No. Good. Anything else to report? Harry was silent. We pulled out after we lost Zacharias. We pulled out after we lost Zacharias, Ron said in a dull tone. His whole body seemed limp. Most of the mission was spent surveying and then tunneling. Kingsley gave a slow nod. Getting into Hogwarts is vital to bringing this war to an end. You'll have a few days to recover, and then we'll send in a larger team. I'd like to volunteer for the next mission, Remus said, leaning forward. It's clear of the next full moon, and I'm familiar with the Forbidden Forest. I have a few ideas that might be worth exploring. Me too, Tonks nodded. All right. Harry, Ron, Remus, Tonks, and the Order. From the Order. Moody and I will look over the rosters and choose 2 more teams. Harry nodded and looked distractingly toward the door. All right. Anything else? Yes, Kingsley said slowly. Hermione cringed inwardly. Harry looked sharply over at Kingsley. What is it? While you were gone, Ginny Weasley contracted Spattergroit disease. Is she all right? I need to see her. Harry jumped to his feet, his eyes wide and panicked. She has been placed in quarantine, Kingsley said before Harry could bolt to the hospital ward. Spattergroit is non-lethal but highly contagious. An outbreak could have devastating effect on the Order. She is not permitted any visitors until she recovers. Harry swallowed and gripped the back of his chair. Fine. How long does it take? A couple weeks? The room turned to look at Hermione by the door, and Harry's expression grew guarded as his eyes met her. Spattergroit can be a long-term illness. It normally takes months, but it can last up to a year before the contagious elements finally fade. It's impossible to say how long she'll be in quarantine, Hermione said quietly. Months? A year? Harry looked ready to fall over backwards. You can't isolate her for that long. That's torture. There must be a way for me to visit her, some kind of potions or spells. Granger, as our most qualified medical professional, is the only one cleared to visit her in order to monitor her condition. Dobby delivers her meals since house elves are immune to the disease and not known to carry it. You can send letters and message with them. They were the only ones permitted in the room. If you make any attempts to come in contact with Ginny, you'll be potentially endangering the entire war effort. Harry, I will only say this once. If you try to violate the quarantine, she'll be moved to an undisclosed location until she recovers. If you have questions, take them to Granger. Meeting dismissed. Everyone else filed out. After a few minutes, Hermione stood alone with Harry. She'll be okay, won't she? Harry said once the room was empty. Is she in pain? In time, she'll be fine. Hermione said, fidgeting her hands nervously behind her back. She's not in any pain. She's taking restorative potions and she spends a lot of time sleeping. Spatter Great Recovery is very reliant on a good health. I'm doing everything possible to make sure she is comfortable and happy. Okay. Harry nodded repeatedly. That's good. Do you know how she got it? Hermione shook her head. It's fungal. No one has caught it. It may have just been bad luck. Harry nodded and stepped closer. His expression grew earnest. Can I see her? Just once. Just for a minute. I just want to make sure she knows that I love her. The corner of Hermione's mouth twitched as she shook her head. I'm sorry, Harry. She's in quarantine. There's no just for a minute. No one can go in. Harry's eyes got bigger. I'll be careful. Anything I need to do. I'll follow all your instructions. Just once. His voice was both pleading and conspiratorial. She knew that voice so well. Hermione smiled at him sadly as she curled her hands into tight fists behind her back. I'm sorry, Harry. I can't break the rules. Not even for you. That was the end of chapter 50. Hi, Cherry. Hi, Guinevere. How you doing? That is the end of the... Thank you so much, Guinevere. You are so sweet. That is the end of chapter 50. Oh, oh my God. Oh, fuck. I don't remember what the next chapter is, so fuck. Evidently, Addie has already preemptively warning us that there are trigger warnings up the ass. Self-harm. Okay, in the next chapter. So chapter 51 has some self-harm. Viewer discretion is advised. Reminder. Okay. Chapter 51. Hold on. Can I just check my phone? Because I think Aiden is trying to go to bed, but he does have to set up the... Which I told him to do before stream, but he said he would do it while we're streaming. Oh, he didn't text me. Never mind. Okay. Chapter 51. Flashback 26. March 2003. Ginny's pregnancy went as smoothly as she could have hoped. She was physically drained from the toll it took on her magic, but aside from sleeping most of the day and refusing most of the food Hermione had sent, her pregnancy symptoms were relatively minor. After hearing about Narcissa Malfoy's near death during pregnancy, Hermione was paranoid about what kind of toll magical pregnancy could take. But Ginny seemed to handle pregnancy pretty well. It's a Pruitt thing. Easily pregnant, easy pregnancies, Ginny said with a shrug when Hermione asked. That's lucky. I'd hate to be leaving you alone like this if you were as sick as the books say witches can get from pregnancy, Hermione said, studying the bright yellow orb fluttering over Ginny's stomach. The baby has a good magical signature and it seems healthy, but I'm not very practiced with any of these spells. Hermione flipped to a different page in the Guide to Effective Care in Magical Pregnancy and Childbirth and practiced a charm to check for placenta previa. Have you heard anything from Harry and Ron? Ginny asked after a few minutes of Hermione manipulating diagnostic charms. Hermione nodded and canceled all the diagnostics hanging around Ginny. Yeah, they're back at Hogwarts again. They haven't sent any messages. Harry sent his stag at night. I think he must do it when he's on lookout duty. I came into my room last night. Ginny pressed her lips together and looked on the verge of tears. Hermione squeezed her hand. I feel so bad lying to him, Ginny said, tugging at the tips of her hair. And then I'm making you lie too. I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. It's all right. You don't need to worry about me. Hermione gave a weary shrug as she shrank the book and slipped it into a bag. Ginny leaned forward and grabbed Hermione's left wrist. Well, I don't have very much to do in here, and I think you need someone to worry about you. You're so thin. Ginny ran her thumb over Hermione's ulna as though to illustrate just how her bones jutted out. Hermione jerked her wrist free and pulled her sleeve down. You don't look like you sleep at all. You look like you're made of paper. Don't you have anyone? I'm gonna cry. Hermione looked away. Well, George has offered, she said with a wry smile. but I don't think he really meant it. Ginny poked her. Be serious. You can't survive this war alone. No one can carry it. We survive together. Ginny looked Hermione over carefully. I mean, maybe you were right. Maybe you were right before. Sorry. I mean, maybe you were all right before, but you don't look like you're coping anymore. Ever since Christmas, I don't think I've seen you sleep. Don't you have anyone at all? Hermione scrunched her nose distastefully. I think I've already mentioned that cathartic shagging is not my thing. She scoffed as she shook her head. Adding a fuck buddy is hardly going to improve my coping skills. Ginny rolled her eyes and shook her head. I'm not saying to get a fuck buddy. You don't have anyone to talk to or to get a hug from after a bad day. Whenever anyone tries to reach out to you, you push them away. The way you did with Harry on Christmas. I don't understand why you don't let anyone share the load. I know that look in your eyes. It's the same one Harry gets when the war is crushing him. But Harry knows he has Ron no matter what. And me. And you. And the family. And DA. And Remus. And Tonks. And the Order. And even stupid muggle fights when he gets too heavy. He's got all that to fall back on when he needs to put it down for a little while. You need to do that too. Hermione stared down at her nails and fidgeted with the cuticles for a minute. What load do I have that... What load do I have that anyone would be willing to share with me? Her voice was bitter. She turned and looked out the window for a moment before looking back down at her hands. It's worse, Ginny, to think someone is there for you to lean on and then find out they aren't when you need them the most. I can't take that risk. I wouldn't be able to handle it. Ginny gave a frustrated huff and poked one of the glamored pustules on her wrist. Harry and Ron get angry at you because they care. You can't assume that people are going to let you down and just never give anyone a chance. What if they'd be there and you never trusted them enough to find that out? Hermione twisted her wand in her hands. What if they aren't? When I really need them to? There was a pause and Ginny gave a sad sigh. Hermione closed her eyes for a moment before reopening them. This way has become habit for me, Ginny. I don't even know how to do it differently. What about me? Ginny said with a small smile. Hermione looked at her. You? Well, why can't you talk to me? See, we've been friends for years. We've roomed together for nearly 4 years, but you never even considered that I'm someone for you to talk to. Even before I became an Order member, Harry and I were still able to talk about things. He could tell me enough. You can talk to me. You can trust me. I won't judge. And I'm trusting you. I'm here for you. If you need someone, you can talk to me about anything. Hermione stared at Ginny guiltily. Ginny, it's not a matter of me not trusting you. I don't... Her Ginny's expression fell. Never mind. I'm not trying to make you. I just wanted to know you... I just wanted you to know you have someone to talk to if you ever wanted to, even if I disagree with you. I'm not going to stop being your friend. Thanks, Ginny, Hermione said, looking away. I do appreciate it. If I could, I would talk if I could, but I don't even know where to start. And she glances at her watch. I need to go. Padma's shift is starting soon, and I'm still helping her manage it. Okay, Ginny sighed. I'll let you go then. Is Padma all right? As well as can be as expected. She's still adapting to the prosthetic. It gets sore and she tires easily. The charm work is not as good as it could be. Flitwick and I still are tinkering with the balance. Hermione gathered her books and potions up and shoved them all into a bag before she walked out of Ginny's room, making a show of removing all kind of protective wards from her body and applying cleansing charms before heading to change her clothes. On the way to the hospital ward, she stopped and leaned against the wall for a few minutes. She pressed her palms flat against the wallpaper to try to stop her trembling hands. She hadn't been able to sleep for more than an hour or two at a time since Christmas. She took Dreamless Sleep Potion once a week on Monday night so her hands wouldn't shake during training with Draco. Everyone else congregated in the sitting room at night when they couldn't sleep, but Hermione found herself unable to bear being there. She stalled the conversations. People tried to cheer her up and include her, but she was too tired to pretend. Most nights, when the house was quiet, she'd sit alone in the kitchen of Grimmauld Place, trying to find something to do to fill all the cold, empty hours until sunrise. She pulled her hands away from the wall and went to take her shift. Hermione was on the stairs with Padma, helping her practice ascending the stairs without a cane, when the door of Grimmauld Place burst open. "No! Let go! Let go!" Harry was screaming and trying to tear himself out of Remus's arms as Remus dragged him through the door. "Fuck! Let go of me! We can't leave them!" Harry punched Remus in the face as he struggled to break loose. "Someone stun him!" Remus snapped as he slammed Harry to the floor and pinned him there in order to keep him from twisting free. "God, no! Fuck! You left Ron! Let go! You can't make me leave him!" Hermione whipped her wand out and caught Harry in the side of the head with a stunner. Harry slumped down in a limp. "Don't wake him unless he's restrained," Remus snapped, turning and rushing out the door and apparating before anyone could ask questions. Hermione left Padma on the stairs and hurried down to Harry's limp body. She capped the diagnostic, checking him over carefully. He was covered in dirt and had a concussion and several fractured ribs. Several nails had been torn off, and he was carrying cursed injuries. "Someone send a Patronus to Kingsley and Moody right away," Hermione said in a sharp voice as she countered the curse. She levitated Harry off the floor and took him up into the hospital. It didn't take long to repair Harry's injuries. Then she poured several strengtheners and restorative potions down his throat. She hovered over him, wiping his face clean and watching the color slowly come back into his features. She pushed his wiry hair back from his face and traced a fingertip along his scar. "Oh, Harry, Harry, Harry," she murmured under her breath and pressed her forehead against his. "Please, Remus, bring Ron back." She stayed beside Harry until Neville appeared, accompanied by Charlie, who was carrying an unconscious Tonks. Padma came in behind them. Neville's wand arm was broken in multiple horrifying angles. "What happened?" Hermione asked as Padma levitated Tonks into the bed. "Fuck if I know," Neville said. He was so pale, his skin was nearly translucent. Hermione cast a diagnostic, but he'd been hit in the arm with an acid curse, and he also showed signs of being crucioed. "They must have expected we might eventually use the tunnels. We tripped an alarm or something. Suddenly, there were more than a dozen Death Eaters in there, and there was anti-operation wards, and we didn't think we would check for them while digging. We held them back, and Remus blew a hole in the roof of the tunnel and dragged Harry out first. We tried to follow. Ron got hit with something. Anthony and I were trying to get him out, but they got him with the wand arm with the acid curse, and Anthony countered it using a Leviosa and threw me out of the tunnel. Idiot, I let my guard down. I saw the killing curse hit him. I don't know how Tonks got out. No one else got out. When Remus got back, he just made us apparate." "So, is Ron alive?" Hermione's voice shook as she removed the bones in Neville's arm. Neville was so dazed he didn't even react. "I don't know. We sent word to Mom," Charlie said in a wooded voice, "to find out what the clock says." Ron's hand on Weasley's family clock steadily read, "Mortal peril." Hermione went personally and stood staring at it beside Molly Weasley, who had taken up vigil there. Hermione felt half afraid that if she turned away, it might move abruptly to Lost beside Percy's. It took half an hour before she could force herself to tear her eyes away. "Molly, there's a meeting in an hour about what to do. I can stay with Arthur if you want to go," Hermione finally said, resting a hand lightly on Miss Weasley's shoulder. Molly didn't look away from the clock. She shook her head. "No. I have to stay here, dear. The boys will be there. I have to stay here." Hermione withdrew her hand. I'll make you some tea before I go. The meeting was seething. We're not going to attempt any suicide missions to get into Hogwarts, Kingsley said as soon as the debriefing was completed. He was utterly calm despite the tension vibrating the room. Getting into the school was already a top priority mission, and it continues to be. Given our inability to even access the school, we cannot immediately plan a rescue to find a single prisoner inside the castle. Until we have a better information, a rescue attempt is off the table. Charlie smacked the table angrily, and the meeting descended into shouting for several minutes. We can't leave him there. He's an Order member. They're probably torturing him. What if Lucius Malfoy gets his hands on him? Harry's chest was heaving with panic and rage despite the drought of peace and sedatives Hermione had given him prior to approving his renovation. There is nothing that could be done until we have better intelligence, Kingsley said, unmoved. He was always exactingly calm during meetings. His eyes darted around the room for a moment before stopping on Harry. While you recuperate, Moody is already heading to a new mission at Hogwarts. We are fully aware of the urgency of the situation, Harry. I don't need to recuperate, Harry snapped, his teeth bared. I need you to help me get Ron back. There has to be something we can do. We have prisoners we could do an exchange. Kingsley drew a long breath and shook his head. If the Order attempted an open negotiation channel, we could alert them to the value of their prisoner. You're grieving. Until you have a new partner assigned to you, you are restricted from further missions. Harry stood up and walked out of the meeting without another word. Keep an eye on Harry, Kingsley said. Remus, Fred, Charlie, don't let him out of your sight. As the room cleared, Kingsley remained at the end of the table. Hermione stood up to leave. Granger, a word before you go, Kingsley said. She stopped and turned back. Kingsley cast a privacy charm around them. She curled her hands into fists behind her back. You need to speak to Malfoy. I want everything about Hogwarts immediately. Hermione stared at Kingsley guardedly. Now? Soon as you can. Wait there until you can speak to him. Tell him it's critical. Make it clear this is a top priority for the Order. She nodded and started to turn before stopping. Should I tell him why? That we're trying to get Ron back? Kingsley nodded slowly as he looked back at her. His expression was closed, but his gaze as he studied her was meticulous. She often wondered, what conclusion was he drawing? Yes, if he has a chance to get Ron back, that would be preferable to the losses we'll suffer attacking Hogwarts. I doubt they'll be foolish enough to kill him. Harry's tendencies are too well known. Until we get Ron back, Harry's useless. There's no solution that won't be a risk for the Order. Losing Ron could easily be a critical blow for us. Hermione's mouth twitched at an unspoken implication. It was worth sacrificing Draco to recover Ron. Of course. That was why she'd consented in the first place. She knew that calculus to be true, because war was larger than anyone. But she swallowed. All right, I'll tell him, she said in a dead voice. After a moment, she added, you realize Harry's going to try to stage a rescue of his own. The corner of Kingsley's mouth twitched. That's why I assigned Remus, Fred, and Charlie. If I put myself on his detail, he'll try to go solo. He's less likely to leave them behind. I'm hopeful Remus can talk sense into him if he does anything stupid. Unless we put him in stasis somewhere and the Weasleys can't access. I don't expect there any way to stop him. Hermione started to speak and then hesitated. Kingsley arched an eyebrow. Her jaw tensed. Ginny? Should we tell him about Ginny? It might ground him slightly. She watched Kingsley calculate the question. She had realized a few years into the war that Kingsley Shacklebolt had been a Slytherin. Not yet. If we can't recover Ron within a week, we'll use it, Kingsley said finally. I don't want any information getting to them. If we're lucky, they'll preoccupy themselves by trying to gather their own intelligence until Moody and I can find a solution. All right. Hermione left the room and walked straight out of Grimmauld Place. The room in the shack was cold. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself while she stood waiting for Draco to appear. He came in less than 5 minutes. He studied her face. I assume this is about what happened at Hogsmeade. Hermione gave a sharp nod. They got Ron. Draco's expression flickered. It's Ron? Fuck, I only heard it was a Weasley. It's Ron. We need him back. It is vital. We have to recover him. Draco's expression grew cold. Attacking Hogwarts would be suicide. That place is a fortress. We have to recover him, Hermione said without wavering. It is not negotiable. I was told to tell you it's critical. Draco's eyes flashed faintly. Ron is crucial within the Order. Kingsley wants everything you can provide about Hogwarts prison. He drew a short breath and jerked his hands up. Consider it done. Thank you, Hermione said, trying to catch his eyes for a moment. What if he died? What if this were the last time she ever saw him? He didn't look at her. I'll call you when I have something. Thank you, Draco. He gave a hiss of irritation. His jaw clenched. I'd prefer if you stopped calling me that. Hermione felt her stomach drop. Draco, when I kiss you, his expression grew vicious. Really? Do we have time to discuss this right now? Hermione swallowed hard but could not stop herself. Is there a point when you will speak to me again? Are you ever going to even look at me? Her voice was pleading. Draco looked up sharply. A cruel glint entered his eyes, and they locked squarely on Hermione. It was like a punch in the gut to suddenly have his full attention leveled on her again. You want me to look at you, Granger? Draco said. His tone was light. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize his tone was light. You want me to look at you, Granger? Draco said. His tone was light, almost cajoling, but there was a freezing edge to it. He stalked forward and closed in on her. Fine. I'm looking. It's delightful, I must say, to see all the guilt in your eyes. He sneered down at her. You know, I used to think the circumstances of my servitude to the Dark Lord were as cruel an enslavement as someone could conceive. But I admit, it pales somewhat beside you. Hermione stared at him and could not breathe. I suppose no one realizes how light one sets... I suppose no one realizes how light one set of manacles is until they have two, he said, studying her expression as his tone grew musing. At least before, I can console myself that it wasn't my fault. That accepting everything was simply the best I could do to keep my mother safe. It's different when I have no one to blame but myself. His hand came up and rested on her throat. After all, I did choose you. You were so determined to do whatever it took, but you will always be a Gryffindor at heart. I envied the fact you still had that space to be naive, to credit me with goodness, and fail to realize that Moody and Shacklebolt had been setting me up from the beginning. When you begged for a chance to heal me, I gave in. When you touched me, I didn't push you away. I thought, where's the harm? It all ends soon enough. Life has been cold for such a long time. Hermione shook faintly. He reached up and his fingertips ghosted across her cheek. Hermione closed her eyes and drew a sharp breath. He was so close she could smell the oak moss and papyrus sage that clung to his skin. By the time I realized I'd miscalculated, you've already forced your way in. You were so obvious, and it only made it worse. The fact you let me do anything to you if it meant saving your very friends that left you to be sold. That nothing I did would drive you off. At least when I sold myself and took the mark, My mother prostrated herself and begged to be the one to take it instead. I suppose, in some regards, I'm luckier than you. Hermione gave a low sob. Then, after you nearly died in Hampshire, I thought, at least I could keep her alive. She deserves to have someone who cares enough to try to keep her alive. I thought eventually you'd give up, but of course, you will do anything to save the people you feel responsible for. Of course, you weaponize your own guilt in order to use mine. He gave a low, bitter laugh. I'm sure there is something poetic in it all, but right now, all I feel is a new set of manacles. His hand wavered for a moment before he withdrew it and stepped away from her. Forgive me if I like it. So forgive me if I dislike looking at you. I'm still adjusting to all the ways the new ones chafe. He turned and apparated silently away. I'm gonna cry. Hermione sank to the floor and rested her hand. Hermione sank to the floor and rested her head on her knees while she fought to breathe. She returned quietly to Grimmauld Place and found her potion closet had been broken into. She checked the inventory and found several doses of Polyjuice potion and 2 whole vials of Veritaserum had been stolen. None of the concealed compartments had been touched. Padma feigned ignorance when Hermione asked about it. I was on another floor. By the time I got down the stairs, whoever did it was gone, Padma said with a shrug. I can't imagine what anyone needs with 80 doses of Veritaserum, Hermione said in a biting tone. You'll need to recalculate rationing until the next batch finishes next month. Perhaps next time you forget to activate the alarms when the wards are breached. Ensure the thieves understand how Veritaserum's dosage works, please. Padma flushed and limped away. Hermione set to replacing the wards in the closet and then went to check on the occupants to the hospital ward. Having regular shifts in the hospital ward while Padma recovered was relief. Something to do. Something to focus on. Something that was good, that didn't add to the intricate web of deceit she spent most of her time being strangled by. It was the only thing Hermione did that didn't make her want to mutilate herself in penance afterwards. Not that it mattered whether she were penitent or not. Not that anyone even cared. When she sat alone in the kitchen at night, she could do whatever she wanted. One line the first time. Trigger warning. One line the first time. Ugh, I'm gonna cry. She watched the blood well up and slowly turn into a droplet that slid across her skin toward the table. She flicked her wand and the blood vanished. Another flick and the cut was gone. The next night there had been more. The hours crawled past, night after cold night, while she cut and cut. As many razor-fine lacerations as she wanted. She could heal them all without so much as a scar. And she was good at it. Fixing external wounds, it was exceptional talent of hers. It was something to do at night. When she emerged from a visit with Ginny, she found Harry standing outside the door. He looked feverish. His skin was pale, but his eyes were glittering bright. Is she doing all right? He asked before Hermione had shut the door behind herself. She's doing fine. There isn't any change yet, Hermione said before Harry's expression could become hopeful. She removed all the protective orbs and cast cleansing charms on herself quickly. He nodded rapidly. Does she know about Ron yet? I told her I'd let her know as soon as we got him back. She rested her hand on Harry's arm. We are going to get him back, Harry. I know we will, Harry said. Then he glanced sharply around as though he suspected someone might be eavesdropping. Can you come with me? Hermione eyed him worriedly. What is it, Harry? Harry shrugged with false carelessness. I just need a healer. You're one of the best. Hermione's heart stalled. What have you done, Harry? Have you tortured someone? Harry's head jerked up, and he stared at her horrified. What? No, why would you think that? Harry gave a faint... Hermione gave a faint gasp of relief and closed her eyes briefly. Someone broke into my potion closet and stole almost our entire Veritaserum supply for a month. I don't know what other things you might be doing. Harry eyed her and shoved his hand into his pockets. We just went and got a few snatchers. None of them know occlumency. Veritaserum works. What do you need me for then? I'll tell you once we get there. Harry caught her by the wrist and pulled his invisibility cloak over their heads. He led her out of Grimmauld Place and apparated. They reappeared at an empty lot. Harry reached out and grabbed something invisible in midair. There was a screech of an old gate, and Harry stepped forward, still holding Hermione by the wrist. As she followed him, a small cottage started to appear, surrounded by a large garden on a pond, which she and Harry were standing beside. Where are we? Hermione glanced around. It was the Tonks' house, Harry said. Remus and Tonks rewarded it so Remus could have a safe place to transform. Hermione stared in disbelief. Tonks came back to the house her parents were murdered in? Harry looked up at the building and his eyes grew wistful. It's her childhood home. She got married in the living room. She said she had to come back. It's all that left of her parents. If my parents' house in Godric's Hollow were still standing, I'd go back there too. He stood staring at the cottage for a minute before rousing himself. Come on. Harry led the way along a winding gravel path up the front door, the entry opening into the sitting room with the dining room beyond. Charlie, Fred, Remus, and Tonks were all standing around a table. They looked up when Harry entered. Hermione followed him into the room. I got a healer, Harry announced as he walked in. Everyone stared back in disbelief. Hermione? Fred said in an incredulous tone. I thought you were getting a field healer. They don't know how. They don't know enough, Harry said flatly as he walked up to the table. Hermione hung back. It's been 3 days. We don't know what kind of injuries he might have. Hermione can heal anything. And the last time she was on a mission was when? Charlie said, arching an eyebrow as he stared at her. Harry looked over at Hermione. 3.5 years, Hermione said, avoiding everyone's eyes. We can't take her, Fred said, folding his arms. The Order needs her. There's no replacing her as a healer, and she has no experience in the field. What the Order needs is to stop losing people, or there won't be anyone left for her to heal, Harry said in a furious voice. Padma's good with healing, and she's used to being on the battlefield, Remus said, studying Harry rather than Hermione. Hermione shook his head. Padma's only got 1 foot. She might be ready for missions with a prosthetic in a few months, but she isn't now. Pomfrey is in her 60s and gets winded on the stairs. I need someone who can move fast. Hermione doesn't need to be used to fighting. We can cover her. Harry's jaw jutted out obstinately. What are you planning? The 5 of you can't possibly think you're going to break into Hogwarts for a rescue, Hermione said, clutching her wand. Ron's not at Hogwarts, Harry said matter-of-factly, tapping a scroll of parchment. We went out and got some snatchers. The word is that he moved him closer to London for interrogation. There's a smaller prison near Cambridge. Near Cambridge? Hermione echoed. There were no known prisons in Cambridge. Draco would have mentioned it. And you got this from Snatchers? We get a lot of information from Snatchers. Most of the prison blueprints we use for our rescues come from Snatchers, you know. Draco said... Oh, wait. Harry said with a nod, looking down at a rough outline of a building. Hermione twitched and felt cold. Moody had attributed most of Draco's intelligence on prison blueprints as being from Snatchers. She stepped closer and stared at the blueprint for a minute before looking up. Harry, this could be a trap, she said as gently as she could. Yeah? Any of our intelligence could be a trap, but it's been pretty good until now. I'm not going to doubt at the time it could mean getting Ron back. We have to go today. Tomorrow is the full moon, Harry said in a tight voice. Hermione looked at Charlie, Fred, Remus, and Tonks. It's as good as anything else we've gotten, Remus said, giving her a small smile. The Order needs Ron back. The Death Eaters will probably expect us to delay and then use large force. If we get in and out before they expect us, there will be fewer casualties. Hermione stood, wavering. If she exposed Draco to everyone in the room, there was no guarantee it would even stop them. It could just shatter the Order. Will you come, Hermione, to help me get Ron back? Harry turned from the table he was studying her seriously. Harry, she started in a pleading voice. I don't know what they might have done to him after so many days. Harry interrupted her, his voice thick. There was a tremor underlying it. He could be really, really hurt. That's why I need you to come. You're the best healer. If he's too hurt, we might not be able to get him out without you. But I'm going to. I have to go get him. Until we get Ron back, Harry's useless. There's no solutions that won't be a risk for the Order. Losing Ron could easily be a critical blow for us. Hermione swallowed. Of course, I'll come. Harry gave a relieved sigh and grinned at her. Good. Come see the plan. The plan wasn't the Order's best. Strategy had always been Ron's strength, and everyone could feel his absence and the need for him as they looked down at the blueprint before them. Hermione's job was to stay down and let everyone else deal with any guards or fighting. She was supposed to heal Ron as rapidly as possible once they found him in case they had to fight their way out. If there was a firefight, she was to get Ron out. Once she'd gotten him clear, everyone else would retreat. Hermione stared down at the blueprint. It was a trap. The layout was too obvious, too detailed for a snatcher to know. She gnawed her lip as she considered what to do. All right, everyone get ready. We'll head out in 15 minutes, Harry said. Hermione fidgeted nervously. I need to get my kit. You didn't give me a chance to bring my supplies. Harry turned to stare at her. His green eyes narrowed. Are you trying to sneak back and contact Kingsley so he can stop us? The corner of Hermione's mouth twitched. No, I won't. Promise? I promise. I just need to get my kit from Grimmauld Place and leave. I won't tell anyone in the Order or the Resistance. Harry gave a slow nod. All right, go fast. If you aren't back in 15 minutes, we're going to leave without you. Hermione rushed out of the cottage and apparated to the shack. She waited for a few minutes. She felt cold with terror. Moody was in Scotland. Kingsley without gathering reconnaissance reports. There was no one to contact quick enough. No one who could or would stop Harry. If she sent a Patronus, she had nothing to say but that Harry was walking into a trap somewhere near Cambridge. It wasn't enough information for Kingsley to act on in time. If Draco knew something, if he could tell her something concrete, she might be able to use it to dissuade Harry. She gnawed at her fingernails and twisted at the collar of her shirt. Finally, she swallowed. Draco wasn't coming. It had been nearly 10 minutes. She was out of time. She conjured a piece of paper and scribbled a note for him with the relevant details. Location, strategy, her suspicions, so if he came, he'd at least know why she called him. She used a sticking charm to place it in the center of the floor where it was impossible to miss and headed to Grimmauld Place. She sprinted up the stairs to her closet and pulled out her healing kit. It was almost identical to the one she'd given Draco, but with a few more specialized potions and bandages and splints. She shrank it down and stuffed it into her pocket and then pulled up a floorboard and snatched up her knives, strapping one onto her left arm, under her shirt, and then onto her calf under her trousers. She started to reach for her cloak, but drew her hand back. Too obvious. It would raise questions. She stood up and rushed back out the door. Harry and everyone else was standing in front of Tonks' cottage when she appeared. Watch her, Hermione. We thought you split, Tonks said. Hermione shook her head. No, I just had to make sure I had everything. I don't usually heal outside of the hospital ward. Tonks nodded. All right, grab on. I'm apparating everyone since I did the scouting. Hermione gripped Tonks' arm, and the group vanished with a sharp squeezing sensation and reappeared in a forest. A large, derelict stone house stood in the nearby clearing. There's an anti-apparition ward about halfway across the field. Once you've got Ron, Hermione, get him past the wards and take him back to the cottage. That way we can make sure he's not tagged or traced before we get to the safe house, Harry said quickly. All right, Hermione said, nodding as she stared at the building. Her heart was beating so hard it hurt. She fidgeted with her wand and felt through her shirt to reassure herself that her knife was still there. Harry, Remus, Fred, and Charlie started constructing an intricate detection spell while Hermione and Tonks kept watch. They cast the web of magic off their wands, and it slowly drifted out of the forest, barely visible unless it was being looked for. It floated across the field toward the house, shimmering slightly at different points to indicate the various wards. As it phased through the building, there were small flashes of red light. 2 at the door, Harry said. 4 upstairs, Fred added. More than 10 in the basement, Charlie said. Bet that's where they got Ron. We go fast, Harry said. His wand was clenched in his fist and his eyes were glittering as he stared at the building. He was bouncing on the balls of his feet. With the detection wards in there, we've got 10 minutes tops before reinforcements show up. Hermione, all you do is get Ron out. That is the end of chapter 51. Good Lord. I know we have one more chapter, but I have to pee extremely badly. So I am going to go pee very, very quickly. I'm just going to get a sense. I think. Okay, this next chapter is so long. Oh my God. Holy hell. All right, let me go pee really quickly. I'll play. No, just sit here quietly. I have to pee so badly. Okay, I will be right back. This is a humongous chapter. A lot happens. Let me go pee. Everyone pee break. Ooh. I just had an Austin Power pee. I am not exaggerating when I tell you I just had the longest pee of my life. I had to pee for so long. I just peed for like 60 seconds straight. At least a minimum of 60 seconds. That was insane. All right, let's get into this battle. Are you guys ready? This is the final chapter of this night. Oh my God, and so much happens in it. Here we go. I peed for so long. That was insane. Okay, here we go, guys. Buckle up, babies. Are you ready? Whoo. Buckle up, shorties. Holy hell. Let me see. Okay. Here we go. A Wicked, thank you for the follow. Imagine Great. Gary Does, thank you for the follow. Thank you, Vanquish Decipher, for the follow. And welcome in any raiders. Here we go. I peed for so long. Okay. Chapter 52, guys. Shit's about to get fucking real. Flashback 27, March 2003. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. It was the only thing Hermione could think as Harry vanished under his cloak of invisibility to set out across the field toward the house. They watched the door open, and there were quiet flashes of spell work before Harry's head appeared and he beckoned them forward. They moved toward the house under heavy disillusionment. Hermione watched the ripples of Fred and Charlie move soundlessly up the stairs while Harry signaled toward a door that led down the basement. She could feel Tonks behind her as they descended the narrow stairs and heard muffled spells and falling bodies as Harry and Remus reached the bottom. They had been in the house for less than a minute. Hermione heard a door blast open. "Clear!" Harry's disembodied voice said. They worked down the basement hallway, forcing the doors open. The quiet felt deadly. It was broken only by the faintest shuffling of feet. Her heart was beating in her ears, louder than the sound of Harry breaking into room after room. They were halfway down the hallway when the door at the far end flew open. Dozens of spells shot out. Hermione dove to avoid a Cruciatus streaking down the hallway. Several curses ricocheted off the walls. The air was filled with magic. Everything was simultaneously slower and faster. Hermione focused on keeping her shield up and dodging as rapidly as possible. As she spun away from an acid curse that would have caught her in the face, the deadly green of a killing curse raced towards her. You need to have the instincts to just move. She threw herself to the ground, shot up to her feet on the other side of the hallway, and proceeded to machine gun stunners into the room down the hall. Nothing lethal, because if Ron was there, she might hit him. Finally, the spells stopped. There was a pause. "He's in here!" Harry shouted. Hermione moved forward quickly into the room, removing her disillusionment. Harry was breaking through the chains that had Ron hanging from the ceiling of the room. There were 8 unconscious Death Eaters on the ground. Ron had been beaten, his face so swollen it was almost unrecognizable. He was clearly shouting, but no sound emerged. His wrists had deep cuts in them where the shackles had sunk into his skin while he'd been hanging. Harry broke through the chains and Hermione and Tonks caught Ron before he fell. "Finitum incantate!" Hermione waved her wand over Ron's face as she whipped out her healing kit. "Harry, you fucking idiot!" Ron exploded as soon as he was unsilenced. "Get out of here! Why the fuck did you bring Hermione?" Too easy. It had been too easy. The words repeated themselves in her mind as she started healing Ron. She worked as quickly as she could. Not everything, just enough to get him out of the house and able to fight if necessary. "Verify him," Remus said. "It's him," Harry said. "Verify him," Remus snapped. "How did Quirrell get past Fluffy?" "With a bloody harp." Ron tried to push Hermione away and stand. "We have to get out of here." "Swallow this." Hermione forced a potion to counter his internal organ damage down his throat, followed by a restorative and then a strengthening potion. "We need to go now," Ron said as Hermione smeared bruised paste down his face to reduce the swelling so he could at least see. "Let me fix your wand hand," she said, pushing back the shackle still encircling his wrist in order to drip essence of Dittany into the deep laceration that cut to the bone. She repaired the fractures as fast as she could. As she was performing the spells, the ring in her hand suddenly burned red hot. Remember what that means, guys? She gave a choked gasp as she kept working. The sensation had barely faded before it burned again. Remember the ring that each Draco and Hermione each wear that burns when they urgently need each other? "That's enough." Ron gripped his hand away from Hermione with a wince. "We have to get out. Did you bring me a wand?" Harry pulled one out and Ron gripped it limply and made to stand. He got halfway up and then sank back to the ground. Hermione pulled his arm over her shoulder. "You're with me," she said. "My job is to get you out." "You bloody idiot. Why the hell did you let Harry talk you into this?" Ron sagged against her and she helped him down the hall. "You keep Harry alive," Hermione said, and you're my best friend. "Of course I came." She got him up and up the stairs with her ring. God damn it, I'm getting too eager. She got him up the stairs as her ring burned again and again and again. Fred and Charlie were at the top of the stairs waiting for them. 9 minutes, we need to go. Charlie's voice was practically vibrating with tension. Charlie, Harry, Fred were out first, followed by Hermione and Ron, with Remus and Tonks covering the rear. Hermione's eye locked on the edge of the anti-apparition ward. The wards end in 80 feet. We just have to reach the center of the field," she told Ron. Her voice was shaking, but she tried to sound assured. They were 20 feet away from the house when the air broke with crackling sounds. The field just outside the anti-apparition ward suddenly filled with Death Eaters. Hermione froze. There were possibly 100 Death Eaters. And they immediately advanced through the ward, blocking the escape, a wall of curses shrieking ahead of them. If she tried to turn and run with Ron, they'd be mowed down. The closest edge of the anti-apparition wards was through the Death Eaters. The strengthening potion had kicked in for Ron, and he was no longer leaning heavily on Hermione. The spare wand they brought for him still drooped slightly in his hand. "Stay down, Hermione," he said as he strained and moved forward to his place beside Harry. The Order had nothing left but excellent fighters. The speed and accuracy with which everyone fought was remarkable. Considering the steep odds, it was unbelievable that they didn't all immediately die. The disparity in firepower was tremendous. Tonks and Fred were the only ones using truly dangerous spells as they fought. The strategy for the escape rapidly dissolved. Ron was nowhere near Hermione. The Death Eaters attacking didn't seem particularly talented. There was a notable lack of finesse and coordination in their attack. However, the difference in numbers was staggering. There were more than 10 Death Eaters to every one of them. Hermione steadied herself behind the shield she had cast. She cast a slicing hex at several throats. Tiny little cuts, simple, permanent. Her aim had grown precise. 3 Death Eaters dropped, one after another. She tried a few more, but other Death Eaters had the sense to keep their shield up. She slipped low, severing charms toward their feet. Quite a few of the Death Eater shields weren't comprehensive. There were screams as more Death Eaters fell, their Achilles tendons cut through, dropping their wands as they went. Hermione followed the severing charm with more lethal spells to ensure they all stayed down. Her shield charm was beginning to wear, though, and the number of spells that had struck it. She dove and spun rapidly to the side as she avoided a killing curse. She felt it burn to the air near her cheek as it nearly grazed her. She recast her shield as she fought to move toward the boundary of the anti-apparition wards. She looked for Harry and Ron and the others, but the Death Eaters were so close. Everyone was spread out. Hermione turned sharply to avoid an unfamiliar curse, and as she did, something struck her left wrist. The pain was searing. She stumbled back, glancing down, and found she'd been hit where her shielded shirt had ridden up on her wrist. Cruel, deep pustules were welling up on her arm. The acid curse. If they burst, they'd spit out their acid and spread. It was so agonizing that it was hard to rasp out the counter curse. She was forced to stop and dodge or drop to avoid new curses. On the 3rd try, she managed to get the counter curse to stick. The pustules subsided, but the pain was still indescribable. She fell back, gasping raggedly, trying to find a more defensible spot. It was so open. Nothing to hide behind but bodies. She couldn't stop herself from calculating her injury, like a ticker running in the back of her mind. Non-lethal but severe. She'd scar, but she was not at risk of losing her hand. The spots the acid had eaten away at the bones in her wrist would never recover until she removed and regrew them. She'd have to be careful not to fall on it, and the bones were pocked with holes and highly fragile. She cast a powerful confringo to force back the Death Eaters closing in on her. Where were the others? Remus and Tonks were fighting back to back, holding their own, but nearly 30 feet away, pinned up against the wall of the house. Harry was closest to her, furiously battling dozens of Death Eaters. His glasses appeared broken, and it looked like a slicing hex had hit him on the forehead. There was blood streaming down his face. Fred, Charlie, and Ron were fighting their way toward him. Hermione tore her eyes away as a flash of a knife caught the corner of her eye. She dodged instinctively and grabbed the wrist of her attacker, using their momentum to carry them on and bury the knife into the stomach of another approaching Death Eater. The wielder snarled with rage and spun to attack her again. Close proximity wand combat was difficult. Trying to get the motion right was when she hardly had room to even move her wrist. Simple. Deadly. With the tiniest flick she cast upward, a tiny thread of scarlet bloomed beneath the jaw of the Death Eater before his head toppled off. Blood spurted across Hermione's face. It was in her eyes, and she could taste it as she heard the knife clatter to the ground. Hermione wiped the blood from her face, spitting and watched as a huge, unmasked Death Eater grabbed hold of Ron and sank his teeth into Ron's shoulder. Harry, Ron, and Charlie all shot stunners, but they bounced off the Death Eater. Werewolf. Ron was screaming in agony as he tried to wrench himself free. The werewolf jerked his head up, tearing Ron's shoulder wide open. The full moon was a day away. The spell power required to take down a werewolf at that point would be considerable. At least 7 more stunners. Too long for Ron. Spells to bring down a werewolf? Hermione scrambled to think of one. She reached deep inside of her magic and hissed, "Carbon Sincere!" Something in her twisted. The black curse shot from her wand. It was like a cloud of smoke that zipped across the field and exploded around the Death Eater. The werewolf froze for a second and collapsed into dust. Ron dropped to the ground. As Hermione stared, everything inside her went cold and dark. She stumbled and gripped her chest. As the world swam back into view, she noticed something moving toward her. She turned, jumping back. It felt like she'd been punched violently in the ribs. Hermione gasped, trying to inhale, and looked down. There was a knife driven to the hilt in the right side of her chest. If she had turned a split second later, it might have gone right into her heart. But as she studied it with surprise, she thought it had possibly missed anything immediately vital. Her healer mind couldn't turn itself off. Her wand slipped from her fingers, and her hands darted down to close over those of the Death Eater who was still holding it, stopping him before he could try to twist it or pull it out and stab her again. She felt the bones in her left hand crack as she gripped his hands in hers tightly, and without letting herself stop to think how much it might hurt to move the blade still inside her, she drove her knee viciously between his legs. He crumpled to the ground, his hold on the hilt loosening. Hermione stumbled away, gasping raggedly. Oh God, where had her wand fallen? There was blood in her eyes. She shook her head, trying to clear her vision. She looked down at her chest again. Her right lung was punctured, and she suspected her liver had been nicked. From the angle she was looking down at, it was hard to tell. She saw her wand. She tried to reach for it without bending her torso. As her fingers closed around the handle, she felt someone dig their fingers into her braided hair and drag her up onto her feet until she was dangling in the air, her toes barely touching the ground. "I remember you, mudblood!" Rabastin Lestrange chuckled as he pulled off his Death Eater mask. His eyes drooped down, and he noticed the knife still buried in her chest. "Look at that! Somebody got started on you." She tried to curse him, but he batted away her wand. She heard it clatter to the ground. Her knife, she needed to reach for it. "How many times do you think I can stab you before the light goes out in your eyes?" he asked before he jerked the blade from her chest. Hermione gave a ragged gasp as she tried to stop him. The right side of her body was suddenly slick with blood, sliding down her torso. Rabastin dragged the blade up her chest until it pressed over her heart. Hermione tried to wrench her head free as she attempted to pull out her knife without drawing his attention. He pressed the tip in and it hit bone. He shifted the blade until it found a space between her ribs. Hermione's eyes widened as she stared at it. Oh God. As she stared up at him. "Here, or should I start lower?" His voice was taunting. He was unconcerned with the fighting all around him. Hermione didn't know whether to try to reach for her knife or stop him from stabbing her in the heart. Was there even a point in making a choice? She could feel herself bleeding to death. He started to push it in slowly. As the tip of the knife began cutting into her skin, Rabastin stilled. His hold on her hair loosened, and his expression went slack as he dropped dead at her feet. Hermione collapsed with him and caught herself with one hand. Behind Rabastin, just beyond the anti-apparition point, a masked Death Eater was standing alone in the field. Several Death Eaters nearby froze and turned with surprise when Rabastin fell. They were dead before they could raise their wands. Hermione just stared. She suspected her punctured lung was collapsing. She pressed her hand against the wound to keep herself from hemorrhaging and to prevent air from seeping into her chest cavity. She watched blankly as the Death Eater who had just appeared began making his way across the field. It was Draco. She'd never seen him fight, not really, but the style was so familiar. He was as deadly as she'd imagined. The influence of Bellatrix Lestrange's training was obvious. The fluidity of movement, the wake of bodies he left behind as he stalked across the field. Bellatrix's unpredictable style had been driven by her sadism, her insanity. Draco's style was brutal efficiency. He wasn't concerned with maiming or causing pain. He didn't want prisoners. He killed everyone. He showed no hesitation as he mowed through the panicking Death Eaters around him. We have a picture. It's very dark. Honestly, it's extremely dark. It's just a dark figure with like little, almost like glowing things shooting out of him, but it's very, very dark. The ways he could conceive of rapidly killing people was terrifying. It was entirely a numbers game, minimal effort, high return. It was impossible that he'd ever fought to full potential before. If a Death Eater had ever fought that way before, everyone would have known about it. He cast a spell on the ground that turned the radius surrounding him into liquid. 15 Death Eaters immediately vanished beneath the surface, screaming, and then he canceled it and left them behind to be suffocated by the earth around them. So cool. He cast curse after curse after curse, most of them non-verbally. The Death Eaters steadily dropped. He conjured a flock of a dozen silver hummingbirds. That's in the picture. Several Death Eaters hesitated, visibly confused. Draco whipped his wand forward, and the tiny birds shot through the air like a hail of bullets, burying themselves into the throats and chests of anyone nearby without a powerful shield. He called the birds back, dripping blood, and shot them off again. He was within a few feet of Hermione. He reached out and grabbed her by the left wrist. She gave a low scream as she felt her damaged bones fracture in his grip. He pulled something out of his robes, holding it high over his head, and he activated it. It was like all the air and the sound in the area was suddenly sucked away. Deadly silent. Everyone around them dropped to the ground, gasping and clawing at their throats. Hermione was screaming in pain and panic. She felt her wrists breaking as she tried to get free. Death Eaters were gasping silently for air as they suffocated. Harry, Ron, stop! You can't kill everyone, stop! Draco! She was screaming. Their faces were turning blue. The struggling was coming to an end. Their bodies went still. Draco, stop! She renewed her struggles to tear herself free and felt the bones in her hands shatter. Stop! You idiot! He snarled through his mask, releasing her wrist. Wait here! He tossed the dark artifact onto the ground. It sizzled and twisted up into a heap of scrap metal. He stalked over to Harry, Ron, Fred, Charlie, Remus, and Tonks. He performed a reviving spell on each of them, followed by a muttered obliviate, before he levitated the unconscious bodies up behind him as he turned back. He summoned her wand up off the ground and dragged her up by the arm. It was hard to breathe. Moving was agonizing. Her left wrist felt like it was being crucioed. Blood was streaming down her side. It was harder and harder to breathe as Draco pulled her across the field. She needed to seal the puncture. As soon as she could find someone who could perform the spells to keep her from bleeding out, who could remove the air from her chest cavity. If she could apparate to Grimmauld Place, She tumbled. Her head was feeling light, and it was hard to think straight. She tried to breathe, but felt as though she couldn't. Draco dropped everyone just outside the anti-apparition wards. She moved toward their bodies. She didn't know what resuscitation spell Draco had used. Before she could take a step, Draco gripped tightened and he apparated away with her. They landed in the shack. He immediately let go of her, ripped his mask and gloves off. She slumped against the door. You can't leave them there, she rasped. They'll wake in less than a minute, he said, his face twisting with fury. Kneeling on the ground, he used the tip of his wand to draw a series of runes on the floor. The runes glowed for a moment, and a trap door appeared. Jerking it open, he reached down and pulled out what seemed to be an entire hospital worth of healing supplies. Draco turned to look at her. His face was white with rage. Can you last long enough for me to get a healer for you? He asked. His voice was shaking. She shook her head. You'll have to tell me how to do it. I've never used complex healing charms, he said, pulling supplies out. She dragged herself up the wall and gave a small gesture towards her right side with her broken wrist. My liver, it's where the blood is coming from, I think. There's air in my chest cavity. It's collapsing my lung. He conjured a stretcher and helped her down onto it. She gulped a blood replenishing potion before she had him cast a diagnostic. She could confirm the injuries were what she thought. He had all the necessary potions to help stabilize her and kept her from going into shock. He was steady-handed. He cut off her clothes and performed the spells to staunch the bleeding and repair the blood vessels and the biliary ducts, her liver, as it started healing, following her instructions carefully. Then he handed her another vial of blood replenishing potion. The spell to siphon out the air collapsing her lung was tricky. She had trouble showing him the wand movement. Her hands were still shaking despite the pain relief she'd taken. It's more subtle than that, she tried to explain. Just the faintest sideways shiver of the tip, or it will pull too hard and damage the tissue. Wincing, she put both her hands around his and slowly moved his left hand in the necessary motion as she said the incantation in time with each movement. He got it right on the third try. And then, after you repair the lung tissue, it's just a regular healing charm to fix the diaphragmatic muscle and move the incision. And close the incision, she instructed when she could finally breathe again. She slumped down to recover while he cleaned the blood off her. It was crusted on her face and her eyelashes. What were you doing there? He asked in a low, shaking voice as she turned and transfigured a piece of dressing into a shirt and started trying to pull it over her head. Harry asked me to come, she said with a small shrug. I told you, we need Ron. You aren't experienced in combat, he said. He was pale and his hands were trembling faintly as he helped her pull the shirt over her head. Why are they bringing you out again without even giving you a partner? Hermione didn't look at him. She swallowed and slid her right hand down the sleeve. They needed a healer. Our other healer lost her foot foraging. I was chosen because I could walk faster. He drew a sharp breath. You knew it was a trap, he said. You knew it, but you went anyway. Were Bastion's prison ambush? No one actually thought the Order would be idiotic enough to fall for it. It was a training simulation for rookies. Harry was going to go. So, Harry is the point of this war. If he dies, it's over. I will always follow him. Strategically, I'm a casualty we can afford. Harry is not. If I improve his odds at all, it's worth it, she replied in a steady voice as she twisted gingerly and lifted her broken wrist up to the side down the sleeve. You weren't saving Potter, you were saving Weasley. Hermione twitched her shoulder. Ron is critical. Harry needs Ron. If something happens to him, it'll break him. He needs Ron to want to win. And what about you? Doesn't Potter need you? Draco said, his eyes glittered with rage. Hermione looked away. Not like he needs Ron. I'm not like that with him. She swallowed the lump in her throat. The Weasleys, she started, and then she gave a short sigh. They're his family. They're everything he wants. To win, he has to be able to see himself with them afterwards. That is what drives him. If he loses it, stops believing that he'll get it, he won't keep going. He won't be able to. I thought you were part of the trio. Won't Potter despair if he loses you? No, she said, glancing away. He'd grieve, he'd be angry, but I am not emotionally vital. I was never very good at. Her lips twitched. Ron connects to Harry emotionally, and Harry is driven by his emotions. So what? Potter drags you into a firefight you have no experience trying to survive because you're expendable enough? Ron comes first. Harry will always take care of him first. He doesn't think clearly when the people he regards as family are in danger. He doesn't realize he's risking others, she said, lifting his chin. He's always been that way. Draco stared at her. So, who cares for you, Granger, if Potter doesn't? She blinked. I don't need anyone to care for me, she said stiffly. Her voice shook. It wasn't an accident, Draco. I chose to reduce my casualty value. His expression hardened. You let yourself become expendable to Potter? The more weaknesses Harry has, the more vulnerable the entire resistance is. She hadn't thought Draco could look angrier than he already did, but he suddenly looked ready to explode. When I think I can't hate Potter more, he finds a new way to prove me wrong, he said, pulling out several more potions and handing them to her. She tried to pull the corks out with one hand, but couldn't manage it. She was pretty sure if she had to move her left wrist again, she would faint. What happened to your left hand? He abruptly asked, snatching back a vial and unstopping it for her. You broke it. He seemed to get paler. It was already injured, she said in clarification. I got hit by that acid curse, but by the time I managed to counter it, the bones were pretty much wrecked. You just happened to grab it. You should have told me. He reached into his robes and pulled out the kit she'd given him for Christmas. He snatched the angelistic from the slot, doused a cloth, and wrapped it around her wrist and hand. Hermione nearly gasped with relief as the burning subsided. Do you need me to remove the bones? He asked after a minute as she watched her cradle her wrist against her chest. She looked up at him. Could you? I was going to do it myself when I got a chance. Removing bones with precision, especially Sarge, was a painful process. Unless she wanted to regrow her whole arm, it was going to be a slow ordeal that would be difficult to remain focused and steady-handed throughout. She planned to deal with it after she went back to check on Ron. I know the spell work. Do you want me to stun you? He asked. No, I should stay awake. Unless you already know all the names of the bones in my hand and wrist. No, he said, glancing away, his mouth pressed into a hard line. Unwrapping her hand again, she cast a diagnostic spell over it and surveyed the damage. Aside from the deep pockets the acid had burned into the flesh, there were 4 bones that had been crushed and another 6 of varying levels of corrosion, including her ulna. She had to... I have to sneeze. Sorry. Phew. Sorry. She'd have to debone. She'd have to debone half her forearm. She stared at it for several minutes before drawing a sharp breath and looking away. The 5th metacarpal first. Quinqui. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say. Quinqui metacarpus. Quinqui metacarpus osios dyspesperus. The sharp stabbing pain. I don't think you say, thank you for the blessings. I don't think it's quinqui, but maybe. The sharp stabbing pain as the bone in Hermione's hand abruptly vanished nearly made her scream. She dropped her head against Draco's shoulder and shuddered. Pain without the adrenaline surge of battle was harder to handle. Then the hamte, or a hamptum. She shivered against his shoulder, trying to brace herself. She was crying into his robe by the time he removed all the bone shards. Half her forearm and most of her palm were largely boneless and lay puddled in her lap. Draco pulled a bottle of Skelegro out. She gagged it down and then winced as the stabbing, needle-like sensation of the regrowing bones enveloped her arm. He poured essence of Dittany across her entire arm to repair the pockets of corroded tissue. She was tempted to scream at him. Don't! She tried to grab the vial away from him. It's a waste. I can heal them with spell work after the bones regrow. He glared up at her. Shut up. She fell silent while he doused her arm a second time and then rummaged through more materials from his supplies and assembled a magical cast with a surprising efficiency. "Why do you have all of this?" she asked, surveying all the supplies as he wrapped the frame around her hand and up her elbow so that the bones could regrow straight. "I got it for you," he said. She stared at him in surprise. "After Hampshire, I was worried you'd show up injured again. I thought if I had everything you might need on hand, I'd worry less." Hermione's heart hurt inside her chest as he helped her get the sling off of the cast over her head. "But this is a lot. This is practically a casualty ward's entire inventory list." He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know what kind of things were crucial for casualty healing at the time. I researched it, then I got a long lecture on healing common battle injuries as a Christmas present last year. It helped me round it out with anything I'd missed." Hermione blushed. "You could become a healer," she told him. "You have a natural talent for it." The corner of his mouth twitched faintly. "That's one of the most ironic things anyone has ever said to me," he said. The conversation stalled. I have to get back. Ron's injured and Harry too," she said in a soft voice as she moved to stand. Draco stood and his eyes growing cold. "Don't ever go on another mission." "That's not your call," she said, meeting his eyes. He paled and his jaw tensed. "Remind Moody, if the Order wants my continued assistance, they will keep you alive." Hermione stilled and her mouth twisted as she looked away from him. "You are doing this for your mother, Draco." He turned her firmly by the shoulders and stared down at her. "She is dead," he said. "You are not. My loyalty was to those least responsible for her suffering. However, if the Order has decided you're an affordable casualty and sends you out to be mowed down as a battle fodder, I will not be noble. I have no compunction. I have no compunction against exacting dual revenge. I will make Potter pay if he gets you killed." Hermione froze. This was dangerous. She hadn't factored for this risk. She knew that Draco's loyalty wasn't based on ideology. It was purely a sense of personal loyalty. He hated Harry. He just hated Voldemort more. Hermione's careless, emotional confession had just given him grounds to waver. He was possessive, and she was his. Harry had endangered her. She should have felt panic. She should have been cold. She should have reminded him of his vow, reminded him that she would always choose the Order first until they won. If he wanted her, he would have to wait. It was what she should do. But she stared up at him, and her shoulders shook. She was so tired. Life had been so cold for so long. Her fingers twitched. She almost reached for him. Then she slowly curled her hand into a fist and slid in behind her back. Don't do this, Draco." Her voice broke. "You are not expendable," he said in a low, desperate voice. "You don't get to push everyone away so that they'll feel comfortable with using you and letting you die." Hermione's hand was shaking, and her throat felt as though there were stones lodged inside of it. She dropped her head and drew a sharp breath. Ron is hurt, and Harry. She steeled herself and tried to twist free. This is war. It's not some sort of strategic self-condemnation to be expendable. It's a strategic liability not to be. I would have thought you would have realized it was the case with me. A healer isn't going to win the war. That's why I was available to trade. I even have a replacement in the hospital ward now. Because of you. I had to train her. She gave a bitter laugh. You did this to me. You made me as expendable as I am. She choked back a sob. And you didn't even want me either. He flinched and his hold loosened. I have to go now. Her voice shook as she stepped away. Draco caught her by the arm and pulled her back. You are not replaceable, he said. His hands were shaking as he gripped her. You are not required to make your death convenient. You are not allowed to be You are not allowed to be important to people. The reason I took the fucking vow was to keep you alive, to keep you safe. We have a picture. And on it says, you are not replaceable. She tried to pull away from him, but he wouldn't let go. She twisted, trying to get away. She had to go because he kept staring at her with desperation written across his face, and it was breaking her inside. She sobbed, and before she had time to think, twisted the fingers of her right hand into his robes, pulled him closer, and kissed him. That is the final chapter of page 52 of chapter 52. That is, we are leaving on quite a cliffhanger. Holy mother of God. That is a lot to go through. Oh my God. So basically, just to summarize, Ginny's knocked up. Ron was captured. Draco said some of the meanest shit ever to Hermione. Hermione is self-inflicting pain on her. They go into an obvious trap where no one has Hermione's back, and Draco motherfucking Malfoy comes in, makes the ground liquid, drowns them, and then suffocates them and buries all the Death Eater lives. And then he uses some kind of amulet to suck the air from everyone but him and Hermione. And then he takes her back, and then they get to the shack, and he confesses that to him, she's not replaceable, she's not expendable, she's worthy of being taken care of, and they kiss. So, holy fuck. All right. That is the end of this another humongous chapter episode of the Good Girls Club. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Holy fuck. Oh my God. Okay, so I love you guys. Let's listen to the theme song. We can discuss what the fuck. And if you are watching this on YouTube, we are about to sleep on stream now. After all of that, we are gonna sleep on stream. Of course, nobody's disco. Okay, let's listen to our theme song, and then we're gonna get ready for the slumber party portion of this insanity. Please spam You're the Good Girls Club.
I can't put it down, it's my new addiction. It's all in my head, but I want non-fiction. I don't like the world, but I like fantasy. Fairies, fucking girls, and they're pretty. Highly, do you like to read? I wrote this so you'd sleep with me. It's like 199 degrees when I go to the smart hut, SMUTHUT. All this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. SMUTHUT. Throbbing, swelling, pulsing, pain. Big fat tits stick in between. SMUTHUT. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. I wake up alone staring at my ceiling. I try not to care, so I just start reading. Sits in the cup chair, he watches me finish. He just likes to stare. Oh my God, he's British. Her job's to satisfy his needs. Those man bets I just wanna squeeze. Feels like I'm gonna sneeze. Squid isn't pee-pee, won't somebody breed me? SMUTHUT. All this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. SMUTHUT. Throbbing, swelling, pulsing, pain. Big fat tits stick in between. SMUTHUT. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked